Now we'll have we'll be back to a hybrid meeting. But in the meantime, Chris, we thank you for stepping in. And these are all the faces that are watching you. But if everybody wants to turn their camera off now so that you can eat your supper with your mouths open and sip your wine, that's fine. But I think I'm going to ask you all just to turn your heaters off and open your doors just to express solidarity with the conditions that Chris had while he was hiking. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And Chris, over to you. We look forward to it.
Right. So, hey, everybody. Let me just get my screen set up. There we go. So first of all, such a lekker thing to be speaking again. Just a bit of history for the new guys in the room, and there's quite a few that have come in. The ESSA used to be the Wits Explorers and was set up early in the 1980s, and there's a couple of guys in the room that were part of that initial journey. So congrats to them, because a lot of time behind us. And ESSA then was set up because people just didn't want to grow up, and continued to have lots and lots of lekker adventures. So certainly a privilege to be back again. And maybe also just to say, when the email first went out, asking me to speak or introducing me, it was said that I was going to do a multi-day hike once a month. It was actually not so much a multi-day hike, but certainly an adventure every single month in 2021, as a sort of like coming out of 2020, and certainly quite far along that journey and on track to achieve the goal, which is quite an exciting thing. And two of the adventures has been the Amatola Trail and the Kruger Trail, which both were quite spectacular. I just want to make sure that my phone is on silent. There we go. So yeah, quite spectacular adventures, and really both remarkable in their own right. So wanted to start off with the Amatola Trail, and the bit of history behind the trail is that it was set up in about the 1980s, same sort of time frame as the Wits Explorers, by a guy who was contracted by the Ciskei government. He used to be a forester, and it took him about 10 years to actually map and route the trail and then start walking it. And what was quite interesting about the thing is that it stops about 4 or 5 kilometers from the Hogsback, which is the final destination. And the reason for that is where the border was for the original Ciskei. So obviously when those homelands were put away, there's now this question of why it's in the middle of nowhere, the end certainly. And so yeah, the Amatola has quite a cool reputation as being South Africa's toughest hutted camp hike, but also South Africa's scenic hike. And certainly it lives up to that expectation. I would have it as one of the top, certainly my top 3, maybe even top 1 hike in the country. 110 kilometers. And what makes it really awesome as well is that it's a slack pack trail, which means on day 2 and day 5, food is delivered. And so we ate like kings throughout the trail, because we could really pack well, and lasagna on day 2, pizza on day 5, having beers delivered to us. And it was just glorious. So the trail itself is long, and it because it's got such a big reputation. A lot of the guys were doing some real serious training and prep, and certainly the guys in the Cape did some really power training, and they were easily one of the toughest guys on the hike, which made the hike so much more enjoyable. For anybody going forward, do your homework and get onto the stairs. Also, pack your bags really well, because a light bag makes all the difference. Certainly, our team had a goal to have maximum 11-12 kilos in our bags going, which really worked well. The other question gets asked all the time is, what is the best time of year to do the trail? And we did it in around April or so, March, April, and the weather was spectacular. They're not too heavy rains, not too heavy temperatures, and certainly I would go back at that time, or maybe in springtime. But winter can be a bit cold, and sort of December times a bit rainy. So yeah, ideal autumn, spring. To start the trail, we went into a place called Away with the Fairies, which is run by a guy called Dan. And Dan is quite simply the man. He is really on top of his game, and working with him just makes the trail so much easier. Dan also is well known for possibly the best bath in the whole country, and maybe even in the whole world, looking out into what I've been told is the second oldest forest in the country or something like that. So Dan takes us using the beast to the beginning of the trailhead, and then drops us off to start the trail. And obviously starting off really spiffy and clean and sparkly and shiny and exciting and no blisters and no knee pains was quite the thing. And I think most of us were feeling a little bit anxious about what the next 6 days had in store for us. And certainly within a couple of 100 meters, we entered into this absolutely exquisite dome of trees and moss and fungi and ferns. The greenery is simply quite spectacular. The depth and the number of trees surrounding, for me, was certainly mind-blowing. It was spiritual. And walking along these tracks that are really very well marked out was such a pleasure. There was never any stress about where we were going, what we had to do next, which means you can really embrace what the journey is about and where you are. Just the green is quite something to behold. But not only the green and being in the actual forest themselves, plenty vistas, plenty open space, looking out into what seems to be the rest of the planet. So just beautiful, stopping on a regular basis and looking out over these extreme vistas is one of the reasons why the hike is known as one of the most scenic hikes in the country. But I think for me, the main reason I wanted to go through was to experience the waterfalls and the water in the area. My screen print thing is on, I must remember for later. So the waterfalls are quite spectacular, and whether it's small streams or these massive stories high waterfalls, it just added to the overall vibe of the place. Just want to clear this off. Weird. Okay. Just guys, give me 1 second. I was wanting to clear it back again. Okay, there we go. So really quite spectacular. The water's cold, and certainly one of the I think one of the disappointments for me was we walked quite slowly as a group, and so we didn't have a lot of time to swim in the rivers. But certainly when we did, the water was brisk, the water was cold, and once again just spiritual. Lots and lots of different scenery, lots of different geology, lots of different ways to experience the area that we were in. It's not just one-dimensional, which is what so many hikes are. The accommodation in the hike is beautiful. There was a lot of talk before we started the hike that the huts were in disrepair, that the things were broken, that showers weren't working. But I guess we were lucky in a sense in that 2 to 3 weeks before our hike started, Dan and the local government people did a whole rework of the hike. And so when we worked it, everything worked. Everything was in pristine conditions. And the huts are lovely, certainly made for that much more of a power experience. And of course, places to stop and eat, because the hike itself has got so many water features and so much uniqueness about it. You almost want to stop every hour just to enjoy these exquisite places. And I think what makes this that much more powerful is that on so many different hikes, you kind of it gets a bit mundane perhaps, in that you have the same thing all the time. Not so with this hike. These little stopping places were just beautiful. The river crossings for a couple of the times were a bit hairy, and certainly added to the reason why the hike was so slow. You know, with rocks being slippery and often the water flowing quite quickly, very easy to slip and get hurt. But luckily we all made it. And a couple of the guys would comment that, yeah, there were times when I was shouting and irritable and saying to everybody, just stay low, stay low. But yeah, the team was awesome and absolutely pulled through. And yeah, we didn't have any hiccups at all. So just a couple of things about the hike that stood out. And the first thing is this asteroid field. And I couldn't really get too much information about it, but theoretically it is where an asteroid hit our planet. And maybe just to give context, 1, 2, and 3 people on their way to this field. Thousands, if not tens of thousands of rocks just in this random field, which, you know, it's almost like it was a different planet. And really what was quite astonishing as well is because of the composition of the rocks, which is maybe why it has this name of the asteroid field, very high in iron content, I would guess, because as you hit the rocks with your hiking sticks or your boots, they have this unique ring, which is quite astonishing to listen to and very unique. So I think, guys, you know, with any hike, the way that the team is made up is so, you know, makes for the hike. And what was quite cool about our hike is that the original organizers of the hike pulled out because of COVID and other circumstances. And so myself and a couple of the guys, Karin and Fasti, put the word out to Facebook, and we pulled this disparate group of people together that hardly knew each other. And it was just an example of what's really possible to get together in a group really quickly and have an extraordinary experience. And really the hike every single day was just filled with really magical moments through the team itself, which was so cool. The sad thing was, on one of the days we were walking and we knew to expect it, we came across where local guys were clearing what was ostensibly the black wattles. What was heartbreaking, though, was it seemed as though people were clearing the forest itself. And it also seemed as though there were local people in the area that were part of the project of clearing the wood from the area, you know, forestry companies and so on, that were bringing in trucks, because the trees that were being cut down, there's no way they were going to be carried out by local guys on their backs. And so, yeah, it was a sad reality that although there is this utopia, there is an encroachment and this constant war between you know, money and these unique areas. So just as almost at the end of the hike, little discussion about the Amatola, what was so cool, as we said already, was the fact that, you know, we had these meals being brought to us on day 2 and day 5. And what was really cool is we had 3 birthdays on our hike, and on the 5th day, a cake was delivered to us that was masterfully sculptured by one of the local bakers in the area, and it was just waiting for us as a surprise for our birthday peeps. So yeah, just a really happy moment. And what I took a bit of a kick about was, in the 40-odd years that this trail had been running and the thousands of people that had been through it, this was possibly the first time ever that a birthday cake of this magnitude and how spectacular it was shared by the hiking party. So yeah, quite a lucky thing to think that maybe we have the precedent in this happiness. So yeah, guys, the hike itself, as we said, was 110 kilos or k's to walk, and it basically starts on the side of this picture here and goes along the edge of this mountain all the way through here, around the back of this peak, up to the top where you know, you had a lovely lookout point back down the other side where the asteroid field was, and then coming in behind this mountain through this magnificent gorge, all the way across the back here, through a little gap or a little sort of dent in the rock, down to the bottom of this area, back up the other side, all the way up this mountain, which was quite a climb along the side of this hill, back around the famous Hogsback Mountains and into Hogsback itself. So quite, 110 kilometers is a long way, and certainly huge experiences along the way. And so, yeah, it took us to the end of the hike, 106 Ks. There were extra 4 or 5 Ks at the end for anybody who wants to do the extra bit. It's called the Amatola Plus, and walks you back into the Hogsback itself. So just as a last little point, just to say, we had a group of guys that was just wonderful to walk with. A couple of issues with blisters, a couple of issues with sore knees and sore hips, and certainly I had a couple of niggles along the way. But it was so amazing in that everybody worked together and stuck together, and we finished the hike together, which was just so special. A lot of people drop out, but the fact that we made it as a team was really something special. And for the guys on the group, I know there's a couple of us, just such a pleasure to have shared this experience. So yeah, that's the Amatola, and I wanted to compare that with to you with a second hike that I did. Actually just finished the hike, and this hike was called the Kruger Trails. And if you guys remember, one of our esteemed members who's also on the call tonight, Ash, gave a talk a couple of months ago, and he just really inspired me with all the stuff that he's been doing, and reached out to him, and he put me in contact with a couple of other guys, and eventually made it onto the Kruger Trails. And just a little bit of what made this particularly special is back when I must have been about sort of 5-10 years old, I read a book called Memoirs of a Game Ranger by a guy called Harry Volhunter. And in the book, he describes how he was attacked by a lion, and while he was being savaged by the lion, he shoved a knife into his chest and killed it. And the story just really captured my imagination all those years ago, which was something, to be on the trail for the first time now was moving in terms of like a life goal achieved. If you remember on the Amatola Trail on the first slide, there was this picture of an elderly gentleman. That guy, believe it or not, was actually an old ancestor of mine who was the founder of King Williamstown at the time. And so how these two trails combined in history and personal alignment also just made them both really special. So the Kruger Trail is started by the honorary rangers, and it runs for about 650 kilometers across the length of the Kruger National Park. And the trail is broken up into 6 legs, each leg with approximately 120 Ks, and each leg 6 days. So a personal goal is to walk the entire length of the Kruger Park in the next couple of years. And what's really nice is that the funding that is, the money that is received from the hike is used to fund research, anti-poaching initiatives, buying equipment, that kind of stuff that the Kruger uses as part of its conservation initiative. So it's really awesome to be part of this project. So yeah, just for there's a couple of international guys in the room. The Kruger National Park is right up in the top right-hand corner of our country, and we just trying to find my mouse. We walked from the top right-hand corner of the Kruger Park, which is called Crook's Corner. And the reason it's called Crook's Corner is because it was where the crooks used to hang out, because it is the border of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. And so nobody was able to arrest them, and they could just sit casually and have a camp in the riverbed itself. We then walked all the way south, and for some reason I can't get my mouse working. Oh, there we go. So we walked from the that top corner, which is Crook Corner, meandered out all the way down and ended up about halfway between Punda Maria and Shingwedzi. So a long way, 120 k's plus or minus, and through spectacular scenery. So the hike itself started with the sand parks dropping us off at Crook's Corner itself, and where this riverbed here at the back is where the crooks used to actually hang out, with no risk of being taken out by the police. Our two rangers, we have Warren and Paul, who looked after us the whole way, and really made sure that we were safe. And I thought they did a great job of taking us through the park. I never felt anxious or worried about our safety, and it was just wonderful to be in the park, feeling safe, but having this incredibly intimate experience with this really power wilderness. As also a comparison with the Amatola Trail, the beast in the Amatola was the truck that took us to the head of the trail. Here, the beast was our backpacks, and the reason it is quite a tough trail is because you've got to carry all of your water, 4.5 to 5 liters of water per day, because there is no water along the way, plus your tent, plus cooking material, plus extra clothes, and the 6 days worth of food. So my bag was at about 23 kilos by the time I shoved in a couple of last minute items. One or two of the guys were carrying even heavier than that. So yeah, it's 23 kilos. It's quite a beast. The other thing that made this hike so much more different to the Amatola Trail is here we have to be in a line. There is no talking on the trail because the rangers have to be, listening to birds, listening to noises. There's none of this thing of the people breaking up and meeting up at lunchtime. You walk close together, and it's far more of a route march when you are walking, so a lot faster, but then a lot longer lunch breaks along the way. So very fundamentally a different environment of walking. Also, of course, the environment within which you're walking is so different. The environment here, as you can imagine, dry, a lot harsher. The terrain characterized by this dry grass, often walking through waterways, and these sort of fever tree forests, looking over these vistas that, really the thought that I often had as you look into these vistas is, where are the animals hiding? Have they seen us as we sort of crest over these hills and descend into a new valley? Often we were not able to find game paths, which was most of what we walked on, and so had to bushwhack through this thick grass. One or two of the guys were shorter than certainly I am, and struggled to really get through that thick grass. Walking through Mapani forests and areas of the park where you can't see more than 2 or 3 meters ahead, and we know that there were elephants and buffalo. So certainly times that got a little bit hairy. I was certainly super excited to hear the noises of what was happening around us. And in terms of those noises, obviously lots of game experiences. Perhaps the best one for me was seeing this eland bull looking out over us as we came around a corner, and he was nothing short of majestic. But of course, buffalo up in that northern part of the park are very common. This guy was fast asleep, and we had to tiptoe past him. The rangers were saying afterwards that they were sort of thinking whether we should have tried to go taken a wider berth, because if he had woken up and suddenly had seen 9 humans in front of him, his behavior could have been really unpredictable. Giraffe zebra, impala. And this guy was fantastic. He watched us for at least 10 or 15 minutes, then wandered off. His buddy, realizing that he was now alone, came out of the bush, saw us, and cantered across the this open area to the right of this picture. And watching this guy full gallop, maybe 50, 60 meters away, is a memory that is really difficult to forget. And let's not forget the Ellies. This was actually at a water hole where we stopped and had lunch, and these two guys were just sitting, having their afternoon drink on the other side of the pool. They'd seen us, they were aware of us, and they just did their thing. And for 20 minutes, half an hour, we watched as they played, they drank, they ate, and then just slowly meandered off into the bush. Of course, it wasn't always as sort of nice and easy to see them. There were times when we had to avoid elephants. We nearly had a head-on collision with one of them. And at one point, also, just one of these moments that sort of stands out in time, we had avoided a herd of elephants in the Mopani, and we were downwind approaching them. But as we then moved past them, this trunk snorkel surfaced from this tree, the sea of green Mopani leaves, and you could see how they were, well, this particular elephant was literally tasting our scent as we had gone past them. So little moments like that just, really stand out. Let's not forget the trees, though. Everybody goes to the park looking for the big five. I found the baobabs at that part of the park just exquisite. They are also so majestic. But the figs, the jackalberries, many times walked up to a tree and just put my hand up against it just to feel the coolness of that trunk, and imagining, this baobab, for example, existing for thousands of years. And here we are walking past and having the honor of walking past and seeing it and being a part of its presence. Beaver trees for years have always been a favorite, and walking through this dry scrubland and coming through to these waterways and seeing the beaver trees, made my heart just leap with joy seeing them. So water on the hike, as we said, was a bit of a problem. And what we did was we used water filters for at least the first sort of half of the hike, where we filled up a sort of a bottle of water with what would have been water that had been drunk by the animals, certainly a lot of algae and goodness knows what in the water. And we then took these water bottles and screwed onto the bottom of them a water filter, which we then squeezed into our drinking water. And as our intrepid hike leader, Graham, commented on a couple of times, the Kruger bouquet of algae is certainly predominant in this vintage of our water coming through. But really not a problem at all with drinking, and often we got our water out of springs or from a river, even to the point of digging a hole into the riverbed where an elephant had started to, had dug previously. And this moment of digging down into this point where the elephants had been drinking was mind-boggling. About a meter and a half down, we got to where the water the sand got a bit muddy. You then block the corners of the well with flat rocks, and then let the water just seep through. And it starts off quite sort of dirty, but within 10 to 15 minutes, the water that gets pulled out of there is crystal clear. It has this incredible taste of freshness. And even though it may have been a bit silly, and certainly one of our rangers was saying, it's better to filter all water, just couldn't resist drinking this absolutely pure water in the middle of the Kruger Park. that had been dug from this dry riverbed, and have never felt better having that almost an elixir part of, as part of the hike. What was very cool though, and I would never have believed it before we started, was that we actually had a shower that got dragged along, and standing in the bush, having the shower, looking over this view that is unparalleled, was very cool. Yeah, it was just very, very, very cool. Yeah. And so guys, of course, a lot of the questions was, so what happens when you want to go to the loom? Well, normally as you're hiking and you don't have access to the long drop or anything else, you make a plan. And for one of our guys, King Louis, who's like one of the coolest guys on our hike, he was about to use the loo, which happened to be a local tree that had fallen over, and this little guy dropped onto his foot. And as he describes it, he leant down, grabbed it by its tail, gently put it out the way, finished what he needed to finish. And this is what happens when you go to the loom in the bush. The other thing which I had a bit of a giggle with, by the way, on the hike, was one of our rangers used to keep on saying to us, guys, this is an example of where you do not get caught with your pants down, your pants around your ankle, so to speak. If for any reason anybody does give you a surprise, the last thing you want to be doing is figuring out how to extract your feet from your pants before you make a plan. So his advice and suggestion to us was that before you go to the loom, everything must be off, and you put everything back on again afterwards. So yeah, a reality of being in the bush. I think one of the other spiritual experiences, and if I can use the word spiritual in the sense in a very real term, was we went into a cave that was filled with, well, not filled, but certainly had a couple of paintings, Bushman paintings. And this was one that just really caught my imagination. And it was a painting of an elephant. And it was certainly something that I would never have expected going onto this hike. And it almost felt like we had entered into a temple. So yeah, wow, such an honor to have been able to share this space. And of course, we know that the animals are around us at all the time. If I remember correctly, this was the spoor of a leopard, and quite a sizable leopard for that matter. In the mornings, as we'd be walking, our rangers would be pointing out a lot of the signs to us, explaining what they had seen in the in this new language, this world that is so foreign. We just don't know what we're looking at. And one of the sadder moments of the hike was where we came across a spoor that was quite difficult to interpret. And their best guess is that a buffalo had been caught in a snare that was tied to quite a big log, and this buffalo was now dragging this log behind it, trying to escape. So certainly, as we started one morning, this was a very unhappy thing to see, and left me with quite a deep sense of sadness. And on that note, I don't know if you guys saw or not, but just recently, in the last week or so, one of the rangers actually shot and killed a poacher on a walk that was being held that was being done in the park. And obviously, there's a big outcry about it, and apparently the guys fired first, and he was then protecting himself and the group. And this was what the shoes, what this poacher's shoes looked like. So wow, it's there, it's happening, and the sad reality is that this competition between the park and what it represents as a way of making money is, of course, very real. As we start to maybe finish up for the evening, just to say that the mornings for me were my best time ever. This particular morning was our fifth morning on the trail. Looking out into the sunrise. The hornbills were doing their thing during the night. Had heard the hyenas multiple times, and just this incredible tranquility and the this expanse and this beauty of the sunrise, and this sort of very iconic African skyline used to lift my soul to the point of almost you know, being the sort of like tearful joy. And yeah, just certainly will never forget these mornings. Out of so you guys can get a sense of where we were living. This was our first night in a grove, and if I remember correctly, there were jackalberry trees. The river just on the left-hand side, a tiny spring that we took water from. Our second night was in a riverbed, and you know, the being in this sort of like space where, with a lot of water flowing past, we had a troop of baboons that were barking the sunset away. The sun was reflecting onto the river. Yeah, just it's almost indescribable. Our third night was in the bush next to the river, where we were digging for water. The fourth night, deep in the bush. Here you can see this was my tent. The shower was just in the back here, and this is where our Bushman Museum, our Bushman Temple was, just on the other side of these hills. And we stopped and had you know, sunset on one of the koppies, these massive domes that were sticking out of the bush. And you know, just on that note, one of the things that was so cool was every single day we had a different theme or a different vibe on the hike, which was glorious. It wasn't just the same thing day after day after day after day, which was one of my biggest sort of worries going into the hike, that it would actually become a little bit boring or monotonous. And then our last night, which was quite frankly one of the best evenings of my life. In fact, I even get quite teary describing it. The picture that is in the front, that my first slide actually was the night in this that we experienced. And certainly, you know, along the way, I'd always said to everybody, look, I want a lion experience. I want to know that they're there. I want to be able to brag, have the bragging rights and what have you. And our host Graham, as we said, you know, he had said he's a lion guy. He's attracted to them. They're attracted to him. And I kept on saying to him, come on, dude, enough talk now. I want this thing to happen. And that night we made a fire for the first time. And you know, we don't make fires every night because it is quite damaging for the local environment. And we heard this lion roaring probably 400 or 500 meters away, you know, however long it is. And as things got darker, all of a sudden our rangers stood up with their rifles, very calmly and professionally told us to get behind the rifle. One of the guys had his torch on. They said, turn the torch off immediately, please. All right, everybody, remember, stand behind the rifle at all times. And just suddenly, out of nowhere, the silhouette of a lion came out in the light from the torch that was on this guy's rifle barrel. And obviously, I think it was her, if I remember correctly, her eyes were reflecting, could see her body probably 30 to 40 meters away. And it seems like she wasn't actually there looking for us specifically, but had seen the camp and come to us on her way to the river. And yep, we were asked to get into our tents by you know, after having moved backwards to get into the space, and was told, like, under no circumstances leave your tents at night. And what was a little bit hairy was I hadn't brought tent pegs because, you know, I was saving a bit of weight. and it was quite a windy night, and I was lying in my tent, in this bloody fly sheet kept on rustling in the wind. And every time it rustled, I was like, oh my God, is this one of the lions that is now sort of snooping around, trying to get its nose under the fly sheet? But needless to say, it was only the wind. And in the morning, there were no any of the spoor around. So these guys had just left us to our own devices. So Graham, you truly are the Lion King. So guys, that's pretty much the end of this little talk tonight. And obviously got to finish with an iconic sunset. Every night the sunsets just made me just sit and feel so blessed and so grateful to have had the honor to have been on this hike. It is an exclusive hike. It is reasonably expensive to be there, but certainly worth every cent that I spent. And I have every intention to do the next 5 legs and to complete the full 650 Ks of the Kruger. So ladies and gentlemen, that is me for the night. But just before I finish up, just a quick punt out to a couple of guys. The first is Mr. King Louis, who I mentioned a bit earlier. He owns a backpack vehicle. And one of the trips that I'm hoping to put together once the sort of COVID has calmed down a bit, and it might only be beginning of next year, we'll have to see, is a birding trip that will take for 5-10 days using his overland vehicle to go to 3 or 4 or 5 different birding sites. And he's a bird master. If anybody would be interested in using the vehicle or going and doing an overland trip, please let me know. He certainly could use the work, given what we've come through. The second, guys, I'd just like to let you guys know about is the guys from the Cape that we did the Amatola trail with. They have set up a hiking business in that sort of Cape area of Tilbach, and these ladies are machines, and they are super amazing as a team. And if anybody goes into the Cape and you want to explore some of those Cape mountains, this is the team that can take you, and they are doing amazing hikes every week. So yeah, once again, if you guys are interested, let me know and I can share their details. And then lastly, just to first of all say a massive thank you to Graham, who was our host on this trail, on the Kruger trails. He made it happen. He put it together. He's had the vision to walk the trail and to do it, with a group of guys. He is going to be putting together the second leg in September. I can't remember the exact dates. His tourists from overseas have dropped out because of COVID. So there are spaces available. And ladies and gentlemen, please, if this has any interest for you whatsoever, find a way of getting the cash, because it is truly spectacular. I mean, I use that word too much, but wow, it's worth it. So yeah, if you're interested, if you have any interest at all, give me a shout and I will share with you his details and how it works, and if you have any questions and so on. And yeah, that is me for the night.
Excellent.
Fantastic, Chris. Wow, what a talk, hey? Really, really fantastic. And you see, everyone, I've told you, he's a great adventurer, and he's a great speaker and great photos as well, Chris. And so I really want to say on behalf of ESSA, thank you very much. What a special trip. If that doesn't entice us to all get off our armchairs, then nothing will. I don't know if there were a few questions. Lewis, can I ask you to maybe just to scroll through the chats and just to field a couple of questions there?
The only one that I saw was, how old was your backpack?
Yeah, that museum piece.
For the person that asked the question, I know how old you are, that you recognize the backpack. That backpack is a boulder and it is iconic. And as far as I'm concerned, is better than any of this nonsense that's being used these days.
I concur, Chris. Yes, I recognize it myself.
Actually, still got a boulder as well. And
Yeah.
Kelly asked how much cash needed for Kruger.
So I paid 9,000 Rand for the hike that I did. Just to give you a heads up, the way that the Kruger Trail works is it's organized and run by the Honorary Rangers, an organization that I have massive respect for. And they auction off hikes every single year. And if you guys remember, a couple of months ago, I was trying to put it together. I completely got all my ducks mixed up. And I thought it was 15,000 Rand to do the hike. It works out that 15,000 Rand is what you pay to just have the right to auction for the hike. This year, the Honorary Rangers offered one trail. So in other words, one group of 8 people. And that trail sold for 175,000 Rand. And the reason that they only did one was because they're still trying to deal with the backlog from all the hikes that were last year that got canceled because of COVID. And guys, I can tell you right now that price is going up, and it is going up exponentially. So if this is something that grabs your fancy, now is the time to do it. I'm not 100% sure with how it's going to work with the next hike. But from what I understand, it's going to be probably about 10,500 Rand to do. And I'm really seriously spending that money again, just because this experience is life-changing.
Yeah. Chris, your enthusiasm shines through like nothing on earth. I mean, it's inspirational to all of us. So I really just do want to say thank you. Before we sign off, Chris is also, I told you he's full of ideas and plans, and he's got a great trip planned up to Gonorrhea. Do you want to just tell us about that quickly, Chris?
Yeah, lekker. So a couple of times, twice now, through 2 of the guys that are actually on the talk tonight, Robin and Lisa, who invited me up to be part of the Monopool's game counts, and also experiences that, weeks of a life that will stay with me for the rest of time. And certainly those are talks that are worth in its own right, if anybody's interested. So through them, there's a possibility that we will be going up to Gonorrhea in October. So far, I have a booking that is confirmed and put it out onto the ESSA mailing list just before I went onto the Kruger trails. And I know that I haven't got back to everybody. I will do it in the next week to 10 days or so. The trip has been way, way, way oversubscribed. There's no way I'm going to be able to offer everybody who's put their names down a place. And what we're doing is there's a possibility that the organizers of the game count will open up a second place for the guys that have put their hands up to say they're interested. But yeah, we're heading out to do the game count, Gonorrhea in October. And if the people that have said they're interested drop out, then I will have a couple of spaces available. Okay. But about 10 days or so, living in the bush, just with a tent, nothing else.
So Chris, just as a credit to you, I see we've got 56 people, and obviously you've attracted such a big audience because of your amazing storytelling and your adventures. So we appreciate it. We thank you very much. And out of these 56 people, I hope we'll see most of you again. And certainly I hope that you'll join us by Zoom. And as lockdown eases again, we hope that we'll see you in reality, either at a talk or on a trip or on both. So I'm going to ask everyone to turn their cameras on again and unmute themselves. And let's just give Chris a warm round of applause and a big thank you for sharing this.
Good to see you, Chris.
All right, guys. If anybody does want to, I see people from family in England. What a lovely surprise, guys. If anybody is interested in joining ESSA, we need new members. Drop me a line and I will send you application forms and details of how to be part of this wonderful organization.
Okay, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Right, everybody.
Please
Bye,
keep
bye,
an
bye.
eye on our website. Look at the mailing list, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
And there was another question.
Good talk, Chris. Good stuff, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great talk.
Okay, I just hear that somebody had a quick question. Anybody still online that wanted to answer?
Yeah,
I had a question.
I think it's Kelly who still wants to know how to turn her camera the right way around.
Did you go
Chris,
past
I have a
Harry
question.
Potter? Oh, shut
Yeah,
up,
sorry.
all of you.
Sorry.
You go past
Neuter, Lewis.
Did you go past Harry Voliter's camping spot where there's a big sausage tree at the base of a hill next to a wetland close to Punta Maria?
You know, Kelly, I had heard about it and then forgot to ask the guys on the hike about it, if this was it. But we did walk past a massive sausage tree. So I'm going to say to you, yes, I did.
Yeah, good answer, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody
All
else
right,
had
everyone.
Yeah, I had a question, Chris. What was, maybe I missed something earlier, but what was that image of a lion doing on the right-hand side of the last tent photo you showed us? It was like a lion sitting there quietly in the grass.
He was just our mascot.
I see, okay.
Okay, guys,
Okay.
anybody else?
No, I think we're done. And for those of you far and wide who've joined us, Lisa, Ash, all sorts of people that we haven't seen in ages, we hope we see you again. And thanks for joining us. Okay, everyone.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Nighty night.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
No.